And we're pleased you have all been able to join us this morning, and I'm going to be keeping everything flowing and making sure we know what time is, getting screen breaks, etc. So we have a number of speakers with us today, and I'll introduce them more as I go along. But in the meantime, what we're going to be looking at is the tripod approach to provide stability for your careers programme. We do ask, please, that you all keep your microphones muted and your cameras off, but you can use the chat or Twitter for questions or anything like that. If you've got any problems, there are two people in the office, Lucy, who is on admin, and Peter, who's on accounts, and they will do their very best to help you if you drop out or if you can't do it. So, I'm Janet Hutchinson. Many of you may know who I am. If you don't, I am one of the partners in Complete Careers. I was just counting up, and I have worked in education for almost 40 years, of which 20 of them have been as a career professional. My expertise is careers education, and my role at the moment within Complete Careers is to help to run the company, but also to work as the manager of our brand of the National Quality and Careers Standard, which is CareerMark. So while we're just thinking about what we're going to look at, there's three things. Most of you will realise that what a tripod is. I won't steal anybody's thunder, really, but just to say they are briefly the new statutory duty, which has come in, but may change again next year to lower the age from 12 to 11. We also have a new CDI framework. We still have the benchmarks, and as well as all that, we also have a new Ofsted framework. So I hope you enjoy this morning. Our first speaker, again, may be very familiar to a lot of you, but if he isn't, our first speaker is our own strategic director and lead partner for Complete Careers, John Ambrose. Now, John joined the careers team when he was a young man who got a lot of attention from all sorts of people because he was interesting and attractive. He's still interesting and attractive, but he's not quite as young. So John has worked for the government office. He has worked for NTU. He has been part of Lincolnshire and Rutland Connections, and he helped set up and single-handedly got Complete Careers going until I joined him full-time. And we have now a number of staff who work with us in a variety of different ways. And we're nearly 6. I feel as though I'm very young again when I talk about Complete Careers. So John is going to start by giving his keynote address. He is also involved in the CDI and a member of their community of interest in careers education. As I say, my job is to keep things moving, and I'm starting by keeping my introduction to half the length it was supposed to be, so that John can run over if he needs to slightly, but he's quite good at this sort of thing and probably won't. So before I do hand over to him, Lucy, could you move the slides on briefly? Oh, no, back. One more. just to say to you that as well as all the speaking we're doing today, we want to highlight to you that we have a new resource coming onto our website very soon. It should be a bit of fun for your learners. It won't cost them anything, based on Myers-Briggs profiling, and it looks at various, by getting them to answer questions, identifies the type of person they might be, and therefore the sort of jobs that might be best suited to them. So don't forget that's coming soon. And then next slide, please. And it's over to John. I'll remind you if you're getting very close to the end of your time, John.
Lovely, thanks, Janet. I just had to disappear for a moment because I had a snoring dog on the armchair, so I've just kicked him out. So
the joys.
I was very grateful to be on, well, camera off kind of thing, as you were in the introduction there, Janet. So thank you for that, really, because yeah. So no, as Janet mentioned, I'm the strategic director of Complete Careers, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here today to talk to you really about the developments. And again, just building from what Janet was saying there in her introduction. So we've got quite a packed day ahead of us today, really. So looking at this theme of the tripod approach. So I'm going to get us started in a couple of moments by talking more about the statutory guidance. We're starting off to introduce the theme a bit more and to look at how it presents itself across the statutory guidance and the changes in Ofsted recently too. We'll then be looking a little bit more about what it means for careers leaders kind of thing. But also looking through the statutory guidance, we'll be looking at each leg of these tripods that we're going to be introducing in a couple of moments. And then what really sets us apart, I guess, really from you know, with our Complete Careers conferences is that we always have experienced careers leaders from schools and colleges talking to schools and colleges to look about what they're doing firsthand so that you can share practice. And it's all about sharing the journey. Nobody's suggesting that they're particular experts in their field. It's more about sharing what they do so that you can work with them and help to be able to develop your practices along the way. So that's first and foremost what we're about. And obviously addressing everything from the learner's perspective too. So let me first of all introduce the theme of the conference then. By doing so, I just want to reflect a little bit more about where we've been before now. So I think this is probably our 14th or 15th consecutive conference then over the years. Janet will correct me later on, I'm sure. And obviously we started off in just Lincolnshire, then grew to the Midlands, and then now we're national, and technology has obviously helped that. But I mean, in April, we had another conference, and the theme there was a very cheesy one, which I'm afraid I was to blame for, which is to infinity and beyond. And what we meant really by that then is we were waiting for the new statutory guidance at the time, and we were trying to predict what it might be saying and what it might mean for us. And at the time, the statutory guidance that was out before said that we were supposed to be meeting all 8 Gatsby benchmarks by the end of 2020. And we got past 2020 without any further statutory guidance, but most schools and colleges weren't meeting all 8 Gatsby benchmarks. And to many, they seemed very much like infinity. But also at the time, in government, in kind of policy and in practice and research, we're starting to find out more about, well, actually, is Gatsby enough? You know, or are there things that we can do to go beyond that Gatsby to look at best practice for the learners? So that was very much the theme back then. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to come up with anything near as catchy for the theme this time around. It's more about this tripod approach to provide stability for your careers programme. Although it may not be as catchy, I think it's every bit as important, if not more so, because now it's enforced really by statutory guidance that's now out. So it's now live kind of thing, and we can start to think about different legs of this tripod. And as you go through my talk this morning, you'll find obviously that the statutory guidance and doing a presentation on the statutory guidance in Ofsted is never necessarily going to be overly riveting, to be perfectly honest. So I'll put those warnings out there to start with. But the notion of this tripod approach with it suggests that there are 3 legs to this tripod kind of thing. And if they're not all in place, the whole thing is going to come stumbling down. So recognizing for this stability, we need to be able to make sure that these 3 legs of the tripod are very much all fitted correctly and in place. And also that no leg is bigger or more important than any other, or else we're going to get a very wobbly tripod. So I'll introduce you to the legs of the tripod in a moment. But just look at those images before I do so, around the tripod perhaps there with the science analogy then, and the Bunsen and the beaker, providing the stability to sit on, or the stability to be able to have the camera on. And if you do drift away at any point during the statutory guidance elements, try put something in the chat then about how you might be able to move this analogy further of the tripods using the Bunsen or the camera to let us know what they might represent, really. So what are these legs? What is this tripod all about? I guess what we're trying to do here is to kind of emphasize that there are fundamental kind of structures that you can put in place really to be able to build and develop your careers program on. One of them is very firmly in place because it's been in the statutory guidance now since January 2020. And this is about the Gatsby benchmarks and also the compass then really, which is the self-assessment of that. And this leg of the tripod is all about these inputs then, the kind of things you can put in place to structure your program. So structures schools and colleges can put in place to support career development is that leg 1. The leg 2 is about the learning outcomes. So recognizing that inputs alone isn't enough, we need to be looking at other things too. So leg 2 looks at those learning outcomes, the career knowledge, skills and attitudes learners should be developing to be part of a successful program. And obviously there we've got the updated CDI framework that came out last April. And there's also things like the PSHE Association as well that can give us some suggestions about the learning outcomes we might want to focus on. And the leg 3 is around the quality and career standard, which is that quality assurance to be able to make sure that everything is built on a plan, do, review, continually improve cycle, and that we're reviewing the impact, and that not only are we doing self-assessment, we're getting external validation too, to help us move forward and help us to get support and comments on our provision. So those are the legs of the tripod. Again, we come back to looking at these images of, say, Bunsen or the camera and think about, well, how can we build that analogy on to make sure that these 3 fundamental legs of the tripod are in place? And talking about the legs of the frameworks around this, it's largely going to be around Compass, the CDI framework, and the quality and career standard as key frameworks that might be able to, we can structure our program on to provide that real stability. So let's move on in, let's go into the statutory guidance. And first of all, I mean, this came out in July 2021. So it came out, I think it's about the 16th of July, where many of us have already broken up, to be honest. And it was launched, and you may or may not be familiar with it. There are 44 pages to it. And I think the first thing to point out is the title of it, kind of thing, which sounds a bit obvious, but it's called Careers Guidance and Access for Education and Training Providers. Now, that's been the same title as the version in January 2018, in October 2018, and now July 2021. But what it's actually saying here is about 2 bits of legislation, I guess, that it's bringing through. One is around careers guidance, and the other one is very much about this access for education and training providers, which is this thing called the Baker Clause, which is about impartiality and making sure that learners get access to other education and training providers as part of that, and have the full range of options presented to them in an impartial manner. So the fact that it's in the title suggests that it's quite prominent within the document, and I'm going to take you through that as we go through the guidance. I just want to point out some of the headlines across the 44 pages. Now, first of all, it continues to use this term careers guidance as an umbrella term, which is like the European or international definition of careers, which is beyond just the one-to-one careers guidance that we might think of when we think of guidance, and it's more towards all 8 Gatsby benchmarks. So careers guidance means all 8 Gatsby benchmarks, which in turn means about having information in there as well as education, advice and guidance. The guidance is now both for schools and for colleges. This is really significant because the previous versions had separate statutory guidance for schools and colleges. So now this is one size for schools and colleges. And it now has a section, pages 7 to 15, that's particularly focused on governors and senior leaders. Baker clause is something that features throughout it, and we'll spend a good bit of time on that to make sure that you know what it means and what the expectations are around providing access for education and training providers. Destination data and Ofsted also features throughout it too. And also, there's no longer a timescale by when all schools and colleges are expected to meet all 8 Gatsby benchmarks by, which again is quite significant. And I'll come on to that in a moment too. I think what also is worth just referencing too is that there are 44 pages, and largely this statutory guidance is quite a supportive document. It's referencing loads of research, loads of different, not so many musts about what we have to do, lots of shoulds about what we should be doing, but also looking at what kind of support can we access, most of which being free of charge, to be able to help us to move forward in our career development programs. The Careers and Enterprise Company is probably referenced the most across the document because it's largely where the funding is for career development to be able to help support towards the benchmarks. But all these other things are referenced to, from Ofsted, Gatsby, Quality and Career Standards, CDI, Skills Builder, Enterprise Advisors, you name it really, which helps you to be able to move things forward. It's also worth referencing though and reflecting on that it does make the landscape quite confusing with so many partners and so many things in place. And it's difficult for careers leaders like yourselves then to be able to filter things through about what support do I access from where and how do I get it kind of thing, and how do learners make the most from it really. So I think the language is quite important to reflect on too. And we're talking here about musts and shoulds. And on page 3, it tells us a little bit more about what those mean. So the term must is used when the person in question is legally required to do something, and should when the advice set out should be followed unless there's good reason not to. It doesn't say what those good reasons might be. It just says unless there's good reason not to. There is a link at the bottom there, and this is something that we blogged about and updated quite recently. A bit of a commentary when the statutory guidance came out about our reflections of it, and also a 2-page summary document on all the musts and also words that we thought were stronger than shoulds. So in that we include requireds and expected and strongly recommends and other things. So do look out for that. Follow the link when you get these in the slides, or look out for it on our website under the blog section. Let's look at those musts then. And, we can pretty much summarize those in one slide, which suggests that there aren't all that many musts across the 44 pages. The first must is about publishing careers programs and career leader details on the website. Now, that's nothing terribly new. That's been around since January 18. But what I say is different is that it talks a little bit more about the need in the careers program to explain a bit more about how you're going to review the impact of the program, which suggests to me, to be honest, that it's not necessarily a program they want to publish at all. It's more of a policy. So program for me is more about implementation of your careers program. The policy is more about outlining the intent, the implementation, and the impact. I've just put a little asterisk there because there is a webinar recording that you can access there free of charge through our website again, that just explains a little bit more about the differences between these key documents like program, policy, strategy, and development plan. And it also helps you to have a template and a structure for putting together a good quality policy, as we call it. So it might well be a good place to start for that too. Also, the actual statutory duty, the legal element that's in the Education Act of 2018 is this: they must make sure that the independent careers guidance, remember this is all 8 Gatsby benchmarks in guidance, is provided to all 12 to 18-year-olds. And that will change next year to come down to year 7. So my advice would be, if you're reviewing it now, you may as well start from year 7 through to 13. You must decide on DBS requirements for work experience. You must ensure learners are clear on their raising participation age requirements then. Colleges are required to hold matrix, and there's a requirement to be able to report data to the local authority, and that's on things like intended destinations and actual destinations for colleges, and things like dropout data and things like that too, and progression data. Now, all the areas on the right-hand side there in red are all the things that are specific to this Baker clause, this access for education and training providers. So you have to allow access to the full range of post-16 and post-18 providers. You have to publish the access policy statement. Well, neither of those are terribly new. They need to be, that they're already in the statutory guidance. But there are a number of paragraphs that supports it, that gives us a bit more detail about what they're looking for. So the visits then, so when people, education and training providers are coming into school, it's about not limiting which pupils get to see them. Okay, well, that training provider coming in, well, that's just for that group of people. Or, you know, if we hold an information evening and invite lots of different providers in on a Tuesday afternoon in the autumn term, that will satisfy the criteria. Well, what the statutory guidance seems to be saying is that that won't, because not everybody can access it at that time. So it's looking at getting those checks in place to make sure that you can really evidence independence and really evidence access for education and training providers. The second 2 bullets there talks a little bit more about making sure that schools and colleges must act impartially with no bias towards any routes towards academic and technical. So it might be really interesting or really worthwhile, certainly, to do some CPD activities with your whole staff then, really, to be able to make sure that they're aware of what the technical education looks like now, and remove any stigmas that there may be within the school and college environment, but also to go a step further from that and making sure, as part of a good quality careers programme, that we're really clearly explaining to learners, and learners are clearly learning more about what the different routes, pathways, qualifications, progression pathways are, and they know about all of those with up-to-date information presented in an unbiased manner to help them make an informed choice. If those are the musts, what I want to do now then is put a spotlight on the different legs of this tripod and what's in the statutory guidance on those legs, and share a summary of that. So on Gatsby, which is leg 1, Gatsby is referred to throughout the documentation, as with previous documentations, and it's largely from pages 15 to 38, which takes each benchmark in turn, and it helps to provide all the different supports and all the different things that schools and colleges should be doing to help meet those benchmarks. What I just want to reflect on for a moment, though, is the language between the 2018 statutory guidance and the 21 statutory guidance, because I think that's quite significant. So in 2018, it was very much more about that schools and colleges should be working towards, expectation that schools and colleges should be working towards and meet them by the end of 2020. So meeting the benchmarks by the end of 2020 created a little bit of a race, I guess, then really to be able to put things into place and to use Compass perhaps almost as a bit of a checkbox approach at times, because we had to show development towards this target at the end of 2020. And that's coupled with no further funding requirements or anything like that as part of the process, meant that we actually saw, especially pre-pandemic, we saw lots and lots of encounters, lots of experiences going on, but also we started to recognize that perhaps it wasn't quite having the desired effect. So we're hearing language like hitting the benchmarks but missing the point, suggesting that there are other things to focus on beyond Gatsby too. And I think that's really significant. And I'd applaud the DFE really in the statutory guidance and the updated statutory guidance to move away from a time frame to when to meet all these benchmarks more, and more to encourage schools and colleges to use the Gatsby benchmarks, which is the language that we now says there, with no kind of requirement to meet them all in full by any particular time. And I think what we have there then is a move away from this blueprint approach, the image at the top right, to say, well, do all these things and then you get the perfect product kind of thing. To recognize that, well, there are all the other things to focus on too. So use it more as like a guiding principle, along with the other legs of the framework, to be able to strive towards best practice. I think it is worth just reflecting briefly on the Gatsby benchmarks, because they've been around now for 2 years, over 2 years, and the research came out back in 2013. And these benchmarks are pretty much imprinted on our brains now as career development professionals and careers leaders. But they're so clear as inputs as to what we need to do. So they're a fundamental leg of this tripod approach to be able to make sure these inputs are in place, these structures that we can put in place to give every chance of success, but also to combine them with the other key elements and the other key legs of the tripod to make sure we've got true stability, so that we can make sure that the whole thing stands up and that the learners get the best from the career development program. I'm going to look at leg 2 now. By the way, these legs aren't in any particular order other than the order in which the speakers are talking about them later on. So remember that we've got career leaders from different schools and colleges talking about their provision, their journey, but also reflecting on a particular leg of the tripod. And career leaders are very busy people at the moment, and most of our speakers are teaching today. So we fitted them in around when they're teaching rather than areas of importance. So leg 2 is around quality and career standard. That's in page 12 of the statutory guidance. And it's talking here about schools and colleges can gain formal accreditation, this single national award for careers education, information, advice and guidance. It's aligned with Gatsby benchmarks, incorporates Compass and Compass Plus, and it also looks at additional evidence of these outcomes, the learner outcomes for students from the careers programme. And it goes on to strongly recommend that all schools and colleges work towards the single national quality and career standard to support the development of their careers programme, which is quite strong language there, certainly. With that statutory guidance coming out it came out in July, the Quality and Career Standard updated its national criteria and consulted on that and published it on Monday of this week. And there's some quite significant changes there that I just want to reflect on for a moment. Because before the statutory guidance and before the revised national criteria, and last academic year and the previous one too, any school or college that was working towards the Quality and Career Standard, that was doing a great job and having excellent provision in place, but wasn't meeting all 8 Gatsby benchmarks fully, would have been awarded with a criteria of making good progress. And that would have been on the certificate And with our career mark approach, you get a plaque too, kind of thing. So on your plaque, it would say, making good progress. And for some, that was a bit of a barrier, to be perfectly honest, because they're doing a great job. So it felt a little bit undervalued, kind of thing, to be described as making good progress. Now, the change now, though, with this shift away from having to meet all 8 Gatsby benchmarks by a certain time and more about using the Gatsby benchmarks. So schools and colleges working towards the quality and career standard now will regardless of if they're meeting all 8 Gatsby benchmarks fully, or if, say, they're only meeting 3, 4, 5, 6 benchmarks fully, but I've got a well-provided careers provision program in place that shows that they're doing best practice and shows that they're actively continuing developing the program. On their plaques and on their certificates, there will be it will be recorded as an award holder without any reference to making good progress towards Gatsby. Also on the Quality and Careers Standard website, will be listed as an award holder. So regardless if you're meeting all 8 Gatsby benchmarks or not, and obviously in the report there'll be some reflection and some summary about if you're meeting all 8 Gatsby benchmarks or if you're making good progress towards meeting all 8 Gatsby benchmarks. So that's quite a significant shift, which again, we welcome. And obviously, when the Quality and Career Standards updates its national criteria, as Complete Careers and Career Mark as a licensed awarding body of the Quality and Career Standard, we are also updating our criteria too, and we'll launch Career Mark 8. And we'll do some webinars around that too. But what will be most noticeable, I guess, and to existing Career Mark members and new members coming on board, we'll revamp the website at the moment. We're already started to do that, and it's well underway to make it more straightforward to find the information and to see it in alternative formats, kind of thing. We've also got some Career Mark champions now. So these are staff members that used to be careers leaders that are now part of our team and are experienced Career Mark assessors now, that you can talk to if you're interested in working towards the Quality and Career Standard and want to find out a bit more about it, or want to know how to get started, or if you're looking at revalidating but you're not quite sure how to go about it. You can speak to our Career Mark champions to be able to help get that advice and guidance, kind of thing, which would be free of charge. And obviously, if you need more detailed support, you can work with them on some consultancy work to help even, work through the standards and to be able to apply those in your provision. So these are all things that we're working on and things that you can access immediately. The third leg of the tripod is about learning outcomes in the CDI framework. Schools and colleges should identify and agree learning outcomes for students taking part in the activities organised by the 8 Gatsby benchmarks. So this is really significant here. So this is talking about the inputs that we've mentioned as one leg of the tripod of Gatsby, but also to making sure that schools and college should identify and agree the learning outcomes that need to be identified for students as they go through the Gatsby benchmarks. What are we trying to achieve? What's the intent in terms of learning outcomes? And we've got the Career Development Institute, which has referenced the new career development framework. And there's a whole suite of resources with that the CDI have published on their website to look at how to go about successfully embedding learning outcomes into your program. So what are the CDI outcomes, career development outcomes? Well, there are 6 straightforward learning areas now in the CDI framework: growth through life, explore possibilities, manage career, create opportunities, balance life and work, and seeing the big picture. And at our last conference, we had Professor Tristan Mahuli, who wrote the new framework, to talk about the importance of it. And what we have then underneath these 6 learning areas then is some further learning aims and outcomes that you can help to be able to advise what kind of knowledge, skills and attitudes learners should be developing at, say, Key Stage 3, 4 and post 16. So this can help you to be able to think, well, what learning outcomes do I need to be focusing on for my learners? Non-statutory, so you can differentiate to make sure that you can take advice from there, but change to suit the needs of your learners. And what's really significant too, is that recently I've had the pleasure of working with Janet College from Outstanding Careers to take the work of the CDI framework from April and to bring it down into primary, down to Key Stage 2, Key Stage 1 and early years, which means that these 6 headings here have now got underpinning learning aims and learning outcomes that are now in a progressive universal framework from age 4 right the way through to adulthood, which I think is a really key development. Okay, so moving away from the tripod for a moment and just kind of like summarizing a little bit more of some of the broader aspects of this statutory guidance. It talks about career professionals, and it talks about career professionals. It talks about careers leaders here. This expected. So again, my interpretation of expected is it's more than a should. So, and remember that you should be doing it unless there's clear reasons not to. So your senior leadership team and your governors, because it's on page 10, which is in this section between page 7 and 15, that's aimed at senior leaders and governors. There's an expectation that your senior leaders and governors are expected to appoint a careers leader who has the skills, commitment and backing from their SLT, included protected time to enable the career leader to carry out the role effectively. That's an expectation, and that's something that I'd encourage you to make sure that your senior leaders and heads and board of governors are aware of. Also looking at the one-to-one support in terms of the personal guidance, there's recommendations that there should be a minimum of 45 minutes for a careers guidance interview, that they should be level 6 trained recommendations at least, and that schools and colleges should use the CDI register then to be able to help appoint internally or externally appointed career development professionals. Finally, on the statutory guidance is about the support that's available. So referencing that obviously the Careers and Enterprise Company is there to support largely help towards meeting those 8 benchmarks and progress towards those. And there's continued support through careers hubs, where there's that expectation that all schools will eventually be able to access a local careers hub. They'll continue the career leader training program, and there'll be more digital support available through things like Compass, Compass Plus, research and resources kind of thing, and also to extend the work of the Enterprise Advisor Network and making sure that we can progress towards linking all schools with an Enterprise Advisor. So that's quite prominent across the guidance, which again is welcomed. I just want to talk a little bit about Ofsted and explain a little bit more about what's happened in their updated handbook that supports the statutory guidance. And then I'll reflect a little bit more on what this all means then, I guess, for careers leaders. So first of all, just to note that the Education Inspection Framework was updated in 2019, and then there's been some revisions to the supporting staff handbook that goes with that, which gives separate staff handbooks, one for schools and one for further education and skills, that gives a bit of a guidance about what kind of things they're looking for. What's quite significant is that there is a careers information, education, advice and guidance section in it. Don't ask me where they've come up with a CIEAG acronym. We used to have CEIAG, but then we seem to have moved over to this career guidance part. But Ofsted have got CIEAG, but the most important thing is that it's in there, I guess. So one paragraph here, 256, that says that all schools are expected to provide careers information, advice and guidance in line with the statutory guidance. So it's basically saying, look, you've got some new statutory guidance now. you go off and use it kind of thing. And we're going to be mindful of it when we come into schools. So especially things like the must and strongly worded kind of aspects of the guidance are the ones that perhaps, if I was a careers led, I'd be prioritizing first, but obviously making sure that everything's about the learner and that we can show intent, implementation and impact. Paragraph 257 looks at all those paragraphs in the statutory guidance. It lists those in paragraph 257. That's all around this Baker clause, this access for education and training providers, unbiased options about the opportunities in learning and work and progression pathways. Also, in the personal development part, again, this is the school handbook that supports the education inspection framework. It talks about this. The word quality is used quite a lot here. So the quality of unbiased careers advice and guidance, implementation of provider access arrangements, so those education training stuff, good quality, meaningful opportunities for pupils for the world of work, the use of the Gatsby benchmarks, and the school's published information on the website. That's in the statutory guidance, and with Ofsted, there's some clear guidance there about the need to make sure that the careers section on the website is good. Remembering obviously that Ofsted do a lot of their work before being on site, so it's about making sure those documents and the information is helpful. Also remembering, if you're working towards things like the quality and career standards, if you've done an up-to-date compass tool, when you register especially through Complete Careers and CareerMark, you can get that certificate of commitment straight away that you can publish on your website that's valid for 2 years, that shows you're part of a continuous improvement cycle working towards that national award. Just finally on the schools part there, this descriptor for good, it specifically mentions careers and it specifically mentions Gatsby, it specifically mentions high quality careers and good quality, meaningful opportunities for the world of work. This is taken directly from that descriptor for good, but it also recognizes and states in there clearly that for a school to be judged as outstanding, they need to be meeting all the criteria for good, as well as the additional outstanding parts too. And it's the same kind of message for colleges too. So again, statutory guidance is obviously referenced kind of thing, and we'll continue to do so. But in that FE handbook, then again, it's largely personal development. There are strands in other areas such as leadership and management, but it talks about this effective careers program, reach and succeed in their chosen career, all about potential next steps, high quality, up to date and locally relevant careers guidance and opportunities for encounters with the world of work. So quite significant there. I just really want to reflect for a few moments on the statutory guidance and on Ofsted and on what it means for the sector really, and what it means for us as careers leaders. Janet's not jumped in yet to say that I'm out of time, so I'll carry on. And the dog stopped barking now as well, which is great. So apologies for that before.
You've got 7 minutes, John.
Right, that's smashing. I'm sure I might hopefully aim to finish a bit earlier and you can have a bit of an early coffee break. So my reflection personally is that there's significant progress there, but at a cost. What I mean by progress then is that we've got the statutory guidance, there's lots of supportive information in there, and it's broadened out now. There's no longer this race to meet all 8 Gatsby benchmarks by a certain time. There's more of an attention on Gatsby benchmarks then, and to do it right, which I'm fully supportive of, but also to recognise that there are other elements as well, you know, that support a good quality careers programme. And that's really why we've introduced this term of this careers tripod, looking at the inputs, the outcomes, and the quality assurance, or Compass, CDI framework, and quality and career standard. And also, Ofsted look to have an increased focus on this, which personally I only take as a positive step then to be able to give it a bit more importance. What cost does it come at? And I think my feeling, and it is a personal feeling at the moment, is that careers and the careers profession is at quite a critical stage at the moment, and the cracks are really starting to emerge, kind of thing. So what I mean by that then is, first of all, is careers guidance truly understood? And I mean one-to-one guidance here, as well as the overall career development, all aspects of careers. So in society, is it accepted about what career professionals do and what, you know, career support is actually about, the importance of it? Is the impact of good careers guidance recognized? So from a one-to-one guidance level, you know, does anybody actually know what a good careers guidance interview looks like? The learners know about it, the careers leaders know about it, the teachers know about it, the head teachers, parents, and wider society. And I think, and I'll carry on for a moment. And then also, are career professionals paid appropriately? Are careers leaders given enough time to do 44 pages of shoulds, you know, expected requirements, strong recommendations, musts? And I'd say, to be honest, my personal reflection of that, you know, those first 4 bullet points, is the answer is no. Obviously, there will be exceptions to that where there are the right kind of things in place, but generally speaking, I'd say the answer to those 4 questions are no. Also, the money. Okay, so just reflecting really on 10 years back, when careers used to be managed by the local authorities and connection services before that, there was £200 million available nationally just for the careers element of young people support through connections and local authority. Now that's gone now, and the Careers and Enterprise Company received most of the funds for it, but that's on a shoestring budget compared to what used to be there. Also remembering in the 2013 Gatsby report that talked about introducing these Gatsby benchmarks, it was clear there from PricewaterhouseCoopers that to do this effectively, you need 200 million in the first year to embed these 8 Gatsby benchmarks, and every year thereafter over 170 million to be able to do these effectively, and that needs to go into individual schools and colleges. So it's about 40 to 50,000 each year to do that effectively. So where's that money gone? And what we're starting to see here is quite a lot of change really within careers leader roles. We've got this campaign at the moment, which is through change.org, open letter to Boris Johnson, looking at fair pay for careers leaders, recognizing that some schools are really advertising posts here, 18 to 20,000 or something for the role of a careers leader, you know, pro rata, you know, in terms of, you know, and things like that. So look at that, find that in the link here, read through it. If you support it, do sign it and do share it. We need to, I think there are about 1,500 signatures at the moment. We need to get this more prominent kind of thing so that we can campaign for change. Equally, this is a bit of a launch of a hashtag today kind of thing to say, well, we need to get some good news stories in the sector out there. A lot of celebrities reflect on their experiences of 30, 40 years ago from teachers or careers advisors and things to say, well, I was told I couldn't do this, or I was told I should do that kind of thing, which only provides a negative stigma to the profession. What we need to start to do is to stand up for ourselves and to celebrate good news stories. And here, the video link, the chief executive of the CDI, talking about how positive his experience was of careers guidance and how it really helped to propel him into the role that he's in now. So what I'd encourage you to do is to celebrate the good work that you do and start to build a base, whether it's a blog, whether it's a video, whether it's whatever. Maybe start to use this hashtag that we've created here, that we can collect them all together and start to make a bit more of a campaign. So when you're looking through about, okay, this is all very well and good, but where do I get started and what's most important to me? Well, start with making sure you know what you're doing and why you're doing it for. What are you trying to achieve for your learners? You know, What do you want them to be like by the end of your careers program? So what are the aims there, and how can you then build the learning outcomes to make sure that you can make the steps across the way to build the program so that you can achieve those aims? Where is it? Where is it in the curriculum? Have you got enough time? Have the deliverers got sufficient training? How has it been monitored, reviewed, recorded? What does the website say about your careers offer? That's quite significant. And I think what I'll do is I'll just finish really by just reflecting on the why. Why bother? You know, and it has to start with individuals. What we're doing here as a collective group, as career professionals, has significant impacts on each and every learner, of raising aspirations and confidence and motivation, self-awareness, social mobility. The list goes on and on and on. And by getting that right, we're having a positive effect on our learning organisation. Proven evidence to show that career development can lead to increased attainment as well. Effects of the learning organisation has a ripple effect going on to business and employers, to the community and the overall economy. So keep up the good work and remember why you're doing this, as well as, you know, the statutory provision and stuff. Complete Careers, we're all about empowering people to make successful transitions and achieve their career potential. That's what gets us out of bed. That's what we're about. And we've got a passionate team to be able to do that. And we're thrilled to have so many of you here today are really part of that journey. And I know I've run out of time, and there is a question session at the end. So I'll pause there, hand back to Janet, and I'll thank you all for listening. And I hope you enjoyed the rest of the conference today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. We now go to a 10-minute comfort screen break. Now, our advice for you is don't come out of the meeting, just leave your screen and the meeting running. Go make yourself a cuppa, have a comfort break, and I will start it again at 10:40. Thank you. Welcome back. Thank you for all the positive feedback we had about John. I've run through and I'm also extracting questions for the end and issues. So we've heard from John. The next speaker is again someone who may be familiar to some of you if you are local to Lincolnshire. But if not, Rachel works at Lincoln College. She's a qualified librarian, but she's also got involved in being a careers leader and has her level 7 qualification. She's going to focus on an FE approach, but I've also suggested that Compass is what's having a bit of an effect on everybody, because after that will come Fiona from Little over elsewhere in the East Midlands, and she's looking at the impact of the benchmark. So first of all, Rachel, over to you, and I'll let you know when you've got 5 minutes left.
Thank you, Janet. So just bear with me whilst I share my screen. So hopefully you can all see my screen now. So as Janet said, I'm Rachel Adair and I'm Head of Library and Careers Guidance at Lincoln College, also the Careers Leader. So I'm just going to give you an overview of our journey of a careers programme in a further education college. So this is what I'm going to cover. So I'm hopefully going to cover those tripod elements that John mentioned. So in terms of Gatsby, the CDI framework and quality. So I'm going to give you a bit of context about the college, our journey so far with the Gatsby benchmarks, a bit more detail about our careers programme, quality assurance, and then a bit about what's next for us, because it is a journey and we're still going through it. So Lincoln College is a general further education college. We have campuses in Lincoln, Newark and Gainsborough. The picture at the bottom is our Lincoln campus. That is the largest campus and the most students that we have. So we do vocational and academic qualifications. So just a little bit about our learners. So we have around 2,500 to 2,750 16 to 18 study programme learners. That also includes any learners up to the age of 24 with an education and healthcare plan. We deliver full-time programmes to adults. We also do higher education. So we have full degree programmes as well as foundation degrees and higher national certificates and diplomas. We are an apprenticeship provider, so about 400 or so of our apprentices are 16 to 18 and the remainder adult apprentices. And then we also deliver a wide range of part-time adult courses, so that could be evening classes or it might be online learning, community education, so wide variety. So as a college, our vision is to add recognised social and economic value to our local communities. And that's sort of backed up by our mission, which is to be employer-led, producing a highly skilled and productive local workforce. So we work really closely with employers. And that has led us to develop a number of programmes in recent years where the programme has been evolved with employers. So for example, we recently opened a policing college working with Lincolnshire Police and G4S. We have an air and defence college where we work with defence companies and the RAF. We also have care colleges where we're working with care providers, and construction college where we're working with employers in the construction industry. So that is really at the heart of what we do, working with employers. So I mentioned study programmes, so those who are in FE will be familiar with this, but I just thought it might be worth explaining this. So we have in our organisation a director of study programmes who is responsible for some of the key elements within the study programme. So our students will do an academic or vocational programme, so that could be, for example, BTEC or A-levels. The vocational programme could be at entry level, level 1, level 2, level 3. Then also as part of their study programme, our learners do what we call CPD. So it's sort of like a tutorial, group tutorial, but we call it continuing personal development. So that's a group where they have a progress coach, and their progress coach leads the weekly CPD, and that's where they do their career learning. So I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail a bit later on. Work experience is also part of the study programme, so that's 30 hours work experience each academic year, or it could also be an extended industry placement, so they're 315 hours over an academic year. They are kind of like the precursor for T-level, so we have targets around industry placements for our learners. If our learners haven't achieved a grade 4 or above in their maths and or English GCSE, they will also take those alongside their within their study programme as well. And then they also have individual progress reviews. So they have one per term, which their progress coach does. So all of our progress coaches sort of have a caseload of learners, and they're responsible for their weekly CPD and their individual progress reviews. So they're quite a key individual. I mentioned our apprentices, so we do have 16 to 18-year-old apprentices, so they're employed by a business and enrolled in an apprenticeship standard with the college as the provider. And we have a number of different models for how that might be delivered. So quite a number of our apprentices come to us on a day release, so they come once a week, and it kind of follows the academic year pattern. We also have block release apprentices where they might come in for a week at a time. And then we also have what we would call roll-on, roll-off apprenticeships. So that delivery can start at any point, and the delivery is in the workplace. So the assessor goes into the workplace. So this is just an overview of our journey so far. So it started with the government career strategy in 2017, and then in 2018 the guidance for colleges was published. So there's quite a lot of activity within 2018, you'll see. So we did our first benchmark against Gatsby in the June of that year. We also had our Ofsted visit in that year, and I took on the role of careers leader sort of in the autumn term of 2018. Also alongside that, John mentioned that it's a condition of funding for colleges to hold matrix, and we've been a matrix holder for a number of years. So we do a 3-year, like a main assessment every 3 years. So back in 2018, it was our 3-year assessment, and I noticed that Vince, one of my colleagues, former colleagues, is on the call, and Vince led our matrix assessment back in February 2018. We also established our sort of management for careers and how we were kind of going to work towards the Gatsby benchmarks by establishing a strategic careers group and an operational careers group in the academic year 2018-19. We also started working with Alex Nightingale, who's our enterprise coordinator, in I think 2019, and then we brought on board our enterprise advisor in 2020. In February earlier this year, so February 2021, we had our 3-year assessment again for Matrix, but what we did this time is we also included our work experience and industry placement team as part of the remit for the Matrix assessment. So that's kind of a little glimpse of our journey up to this point. And these are the areas that we have kind of focused on, I suppose, during developing our careers programme. So obviously in the beginning, it was raising awareness of the Gatsby benchmarks and what it means for different groups of staff. So we do have a whole college approach to careers. Everybody is involved in it. So it's a continuous process, really, making sure staff understand their role and within the careers programme and understand the Gatsby benchmarks. We invested in a product called Career Coach, which is a labour market information tool, which provides local regional data for us about the labour market, so that we could have that available to both our students and prospective students. So that's available on our website. We implemented our CPD framework, so that's our careers learning framework. And sort of as part of that, we also invested as an organisation in a tool called Abintegro, which is a careers platform, which has kind of a self-assessment in it, which is called, well, was originally called Careers Pulse, is called Skills Pulse now. And that's under the remit of our Director of Study Programmes, and that links into that Ofsted expectation around kind of behaviour and attitudes as well, and the employability skills. We record plan destinations. So again, we've improved on how we've done this over the past 3 years or so. So it's called My Future Plans, and we utilise that more now in terms of identifying students who might need support. So if a student doesn't know, what their planned destination is, then we would be looking for the progress coach to refer that student through to us. Encounters with employers. So I've said employers are really important to us, but perhaps we didn't have a consistency across our programs in terms of encounters with employers. So that's much more emphasised now, and there's a role for our heads of curriculum to engage with employers and to get employers coming in, as well as our work experience team who also kind of work and liaise with employers. Parental engagement, so that's an area we've developed over the last 3 years. So we now have a parent carer handbook which is sent out to parents in the summer ahead of the new student starting. We also do a parent information event at the beginning of the academic year. So we now do that on Zoom, and it seems to work quite well. So it's an information sharing, an opportunity for parents to ask questions about what the students will be doing at college, and there's an emphasis on careers within that. I've mentioned our enterprise coordinator, so an enterprise advisor. So we've started off maybe a little bit operationally, but now we're moving to a more strategic phase in terms of utilising our enterprise advisor and working with them. And we have a triage approach to personal careers guidance. So our progress coaches are quite a key role in terms of referring our students through to the careers guidance team for personal one-to-one guidance. So we're sort of on that journey, but I think there's still not always widely understood within the team about in terms of the college about what personal careers guidance is. So we've started some initial work with Complete Careers to identify some training for our progress coaches. So that's still a work in progress. Okay, in terms of managing careers at the college, so there's my role as a careers leader. We have a strategic careers group, so that is made up of all of our directors of education and training and is chaired by our director of planning and performance. So he is responsible for quality and curriculum planning at the college. I'm also part of that strategic careers group. So we have a quality improvement plan for careers, and the role of that group is to monitor and ensure that plan is being implemented. Our curriculum heads also have a key role in terms of, so each of our heads has a different vocational curriculum area that they're responsible for, and each year I ask them to evaluate their own areas against the Gatsby, against the Compass toolkit as well. So I can create the equivalent in Microsoft Forms, and I ask them all to fill it in at the end of the academic year to assess their own areas in terms of their careers programs. So in terms of my role as the careers leader, I've put overseeing the cross-college careers quality improvement plan. So in terms of what I'm sort of doing day to day, it's kind of quite a lot of promoting, looking at staff development, tracking, monitoring and evaluation. What I would say at the minute is perhaps we're not quite as advanced as we'd like to be maybe with the evaluation side of things. So I think that's still, again, something that we're working on. Also, my role is head of library and careers guidance. So I have a careers guidance team leader, have 3 careers guidance advisors qualified to level 6. So that's 1 full-time and 2 part-time. We have 2 careers and course information officers who are kind of our sort of initial contact for our external and our current learners, and they have just done their IAG level 3. And then we have a new role, which is reception and information officers at our Newark and Gainsborough sites. So that's still a bit of a developing role, but again, they will be there for initial kind of triage of careers inquiries. So this just gives you a snapshot of our careers programme. So this is on our website and in our handbooks for our parents and our students. This is kind of what's included overall in our careers programme. So we've got that weekly CPD, which is the careers learning. So sort of linking in with that CDI framework as well, the core employability skills, the My Future Plans, their career aspirations, encounters with employers, work experience or industry placement, then progression to either higher education or employment or apprenticeship, and then the careers information, advice and guidance. So a little bit more detail. So as I mentioned, that our programme here is really about that career learning, those learning outcomes. So it's divided up into a different thing for each term. So term 1 is set for learning, and you can just see a little bit of the types of things that are involved in that. So they would always do their My Future Plans, their planned destination. They would also do the skills pulse each term to assess their progress. And then term 2 is set for your work and career. We also have a theme running through the programme, which is called Learning to Learn. And so there are different aspects that they cover each term. And then set for taking the next step. So, and again, we'd be looking for the end of course, My Future Plans. So this is delivered by our progress coaches. In terms of the future plans, we again try to use this so we are meeting the needs of individual learners. So where a student is looking to go into an apprenticeship or full-time employment, our work experience and industry placement team kind of take those on, and again the industry placement advisors have been trained up to level 6 for career development as well. So we have more than just a careers guidance team who are level 6 qualified. And then the careers guidance team would work with the progress coaches with around those who maybe don't know what they want to do yet. So where they would benefit from personal careers guidance. So it's important they get careers guidance at the right time for them. Over the past few years, we've also been working on our careers resources to improve the information that's available for our students and our teachers. So these are just screenshots of some of our pages. So this is available on our website without needing to log in. The only thing that has to be logged into is the My Career platform, which is our platform for our students, but Career Coach is accessible to anyone. We have a virtual learning environment called Canvas, and we've developed 2 courses on there around progression to HE, so applying for HE and exploring your HE options. And then this is just a snapshot of the page that we have for teachers and staff as well. So quality assurance. So I've mentioned Matrix. So our next step in that tripod approach is the quality and career standard. So we had wanted to do it last academic year, but the pandemic really sort of got in the way. So our plan is to work towards the quality and career standard this year, with that focus on career learning outcomes for learning destinations. In terms of what's next for us, I've really focused on study programmes. So we're not as far advanced with our careers programme for apprentices. We've set up an apprenticeship careers working group, so we'll be working through an action plan for that. I talked about our CPD framework. So we have learning outcomes. What we haven't done is map it really against the CDI framework yet. We want to improve our referrals and the understanding of personal careers guidance so we can have a proper triage approach. We need to do more work now on our actual destinations and utilising our alumni network. We also need to involve our governors more, so there's a plan to have a link governor, and we still need to do more work around parental engagement. So we've obviously done some things, but we did a couple of different surveys with parents last academic year, and it's clear that they still need and want more information. And we also want to work around that transition to college and our schools liaison service, and also around T levels and understanding that pathway. So we'll be delivering T levels from next academic year. Okay, so I think that was my last slide. So thank you. So I am happy to take any questions. So I'll just stop sharing, Janet, and then.
That's it. Well done, Rachel. We've got about 6 minutes, 7 minutes for questions, if anybody has a specific one. You seem to have impressed people, Rachel. I think that's what I can say from the commentary. And other people have said they have similar programs potentially in place, but yeah. You mentioned that you still haven't got Compass Plus, is that correct? Yes.
Yeah, I don't believe it's available to colleges at the moment, Compass Plus, but we have our own. We use a system called Pro Solution, which is our student management system, and as the students have a version called Pro Portal, which is their kind of where they record everything in terms of their sort of portfolio and their learning and things. So we utilise that in terms of individual students and their sort of progress.
Yes, I mean, I think that's one of my issues with Compass Plus anyway, that it tends to be very much the school's tool rather than the learner's tool. And what we're trying to do is encourage learners to do that. Well, it doesn't look like there's a rush of questions. So if you're happy, oh, wait a minute, there might be somebody there. Any ideas about planning to work with the parents? Always a tricky one, Rachel.
It is. I forgot to say, actually, we introduced a parent careers newsletter last year. I forgot to mention that. So we sent out 3 parents newsletters. So we will do that again. But yeah, it is still an area that we need to look at and see how what else can we do. So it's difficult because our learners are becoming more independent and maybe don't always share with their parents like you know, a sort of a pre-16-year-old would. So so I think that's it. And also we want our young people to become more independent, but it is important if parents are an important influencer. So yes, no, it's still kind of a work in progress, really.
Okay, I mean, they're also a potential source of information in that they may all have a whole range of careers that you can get little talking heads for. We've found that during lockdown, that's what happens. Thank you very much for that anyway. And we're now going to move on to Fiona, who I believe has been a career coordinator and careers leader, she says, before even the term was invented. So Fiona, I think it's over to you to tell us a little bit about how you are using the benchmark, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm just getting to grips with making sure I'm sharing my PowerPoint with you. 1 second, here we go.
That's it, that looks like you're getting there. Just make it go on a show now from current slide, probably, or from beginning. Yes, no, that is the current slide, so that should work.
Lovely. Well, hello everybody. Thank you very much for letting me speak today, Janet and John, and really appreciate the fact that people have got a lot of work on their plates and they're giving time aside to listen to hopefully something that I can contribute. Very good speakers as well so far. Really impressed with the work of Lincoln College. Sharing a perspective from a school standpoint. So when John asked me to speak, this is what he'd like me to do. So our focus today for the next few minutes is Compass self-assessment to measure school progress to the Gatsby benchmarks, a focus on Gatsby benchmark 4, and to share some thoughts on Gatsby benchmark 6. It's part of the tripod, isn't it, that he's trying to bring forward as a model to help us understand how to get to grips with all the complexity of careers education. We had our career mark assessment in June. And we've had career mark a number of years, since 2003 actually, before I came into post as careers lead, but more of that later. But I think with career mark, because it's a regular assessment, it does keep me on my toes, which I think is all to the good. Okay, so providing that stable careers programme. John wanted me to share the model that we have, and I do understand that every school and every institution has a completely different setup. Quite interesting to hear, to read people's comments in the chat about the pay surrounding the people who are involved in careers advice and also careers leaders. I totally agree with John. I think we do need to recognise the abilities of people involved in this and pay accordingly, because when you look at it, it's a hugely complex job, and everybody's situation is slightly different. So mine may be similar to yours, it may not be. but I'm still hoping that some of what I say is relevant. So, yep, I'm the careers lead. I am also the deputy coordinator for PSH and citizenship. The second paragraph gives you how many lessons are actually involved for each of the year groups and how much they receive in the sixth form as well. Get theirs through a tutor program, but the younger year groups received lessons, actual 1 hour lessons, so from a dedicated staff team. I'm not on my own. I mean, I am the careers lead, but I'm a full-time teacher, so it's it's quite an interesting thing trying to get everybody to involved in careers education, because I mean, I'm glad in a way I'm a full-time teacher, because it gives me huge access to lots of different people within school and to then promote it. And I think that's what the previous speaker was saying about the importance of promoting and selling the idea and making everybody understand and buy into it. So there's a breakdown there of who is actually involved, but my most celebrated asset is our careers administrator, who has only relatively recently started. I mean, it was just before COVID that we had some personnel changes, but we've now got 17 hours a week. And before then, I was doing all the administration myself, which wasn't manageable, basically, because that's the thing about our job. It's definitely changed. We have to plot and action and evidence, and that all needs to be available for everybody to see very quickly. So it's quite a team of people are involved. I mentioned the sixth form, link governor, etc., and SLT. Right. So John asked me to share the Gatsby benchmark results for our school, which assessments through Compass, they always, you know, make me kind of nervous, because you kind of think to yourself, oh, well, how am I doing? How am I doing? Because it does feel quite personal, actually, because I have been involved at my school for a long time. At least 10 years I've been the actual careers lead, and before then I've been at school for in different guises, even as a PE teacher and a supply teacher before then. So it's, you know, it does feel like a personal thing. A lot of the time the ideas that I've had for careers development have been in my head. So actually, in a strange way, all of these things to do with CDI framework and Gatsby, it's making me put things down onto paper and taking things out of my head. I can only think that's a good thing, because my head's now so full of ideas, and I feel as though I have lots more to give, despite the fact I've been in it for a long time. I don't feel stale, but I do really enjoy listening to new people and their perspective and what they're doing. So I get quite excited finding out about what other people are doing. So I'm not giving you much space to sort of look at what's going on there, but that's our current Gatsby benchmark awards. You notice that I've got a reason note in the right-hand column about why certain percentages have changed, and I have cited COVID. I mean, COVID has had a huge impact on what we've been able to deliver at school, and we are back face to face, but my goodness me, we really do need to stay face to face, don't we? Because as soon as you start doing things remotely with young people, it's very hit and miss as to whether or not they're engaging, and how would you ever measure that? Right. We've always been quite strong in certain areas, and the stability is an area of strength, I think, because we've had this like longevity of interest from senior management in careers education. I think I've served at this school under three different head teachers, all who have had a great commitment to it. And our school is 1,800 students. It's a ethnically diverse school. Our catchment is, I would say, proportionally more affluent, although we then do take if we're looking at a slice of a cake, we do take a slice into the city centre as well. which then provides us a real mix of ability and perspectives as well. And I do like the idea that we stay like that. We're not selective, we're a true community school. And I think it's good for young people to see the life stories of other people and their families, and then start to think, okay, my life can be like that too. And I think we're lucky then to have that kind of diversity. Right, so Gatsby benchmark 4. I think with something like this, you know, when you're starting to measure your own results, I mean, you can start to look at that national figure and think, oh, we're doing really well, but actually forget the national figure. I think it's important to have your own vision about what you're trying to achieve. And year on year, I always like to think, okay, I want to do a bit better than that against my own previous figure. And because each individual school is different, I don't really see much point in trying to compare one against the other. You know, we're all in different catchments, we've all got different expectations and realities, economic realities of the catchment area that you're in, etc., etc. So I think when I am thinking about Gatsby, and obviously there's a plan to try and address and improve figures, that's what you're trying to do, just measure against your previous one. And I'd say it's important to do it probably about twice a year. I wouldn't go for it personally. I know they're trying to get us to do it all times, but if you want to see some kind of impact and change in your results, I think it needs to be where you can actually start to look at the changes. It can be quite an affirming process then if you do it that way, because then you can start to see your improvements. Honesty, I think, is important, but then don't do yourself down either. And this was one of the things that came out from my career mark a couple of revalidations ago. The assessor said, don't do the compass evaluation on your own. Do it with other people around you. And I did then have other people around me. I had the SAT and the sixth form, head of sixth form, and the link governor, etc., etc. And actually the results were more informed. You know, my input into the compass was more informed, and actually we got better results because I wasn't being quite so hard on my own self. So, and my interpretation, I think I'm perhaps maybe a bit more of a perfectionist than I should be, and it shouldn't be that way. You know, let's think of, like John says, celebrate the successes you have, acknowledge them, and maybe we don't do that enough. Checking my notes to make sure I haven't missed anything. You've probably got some questions about how things have changed, but I'll leave that a little bit later, if that's okay. So, Gatsby benchmark 4. The thing is about all of these various formalizations of careers education, they are really good. They do make you put things down onto paper, but we were doing them before. I think many schools were actually doing them before. Perhaps it might not have been quite as organized. It might not have been so efficient. Maybe it would have been a bit more ad hoc, but honestly, truthfully, I think that we did do all this before. We knew how important it was. I certainly felt, and I do feel now, that with young people and linking what they're learning as a subject to real life is absolutely, completely invaluable. Why else are they here? You know, I mean, obviously I want them to have a good social life, I want them to develop their confidence, and I want them to get great exam results, but actually there's a purpose for being at school. I'm far from seeing a young person as a product. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying give them a reason for being here, that then and helps them to sort of see that actually there's a point to the whole thing. So this is where I think, it's not a fantastic diagram. I think lots of people have done different diagrams that say exactly the same things, but that very first box, it comes from the top, is absolutely true. I mean, it has to be from the senior management team to give that kind of like, yes, green light, let's go for it, we're going to do it. And I know that there are other influences here. We've got Ofsted listed in there, and yes, you know, everybody then thinks, oh, Ofsted, we've got to make sure it's done. And there are other people then influencing ourselves here. Look, you know, the enterprise partnership and the enterprise advisor, very interesting as well, because that takes us out of our school. Yes, then we make the plan. Then we create that employment strategy, the careers and employability strategy that then informs the department plans, that then cascades down into what we are actually doing at the chalk face, as it were, going back to the old terms. But you've got to have buy-in from the senior management team. And I'm a middle manager, I'm not senior management. So I've been very fortunate, I think, to have such a supportive senior management team. Okay, so this is just an illustration of how things have moved forward in our school a lot. I mean, we've always had a student banner, but our head teacher this time around has given me permission to actually publish some important bits of paper within it. So employability policies and employability skills, I mean, those are our diagrams, we actually pulled them together, but they are like, some of those terms come from bits from all over the place, and we put them together in those diagrams, put them into the planners, and it's just a tool. It's just a tool I wanted to share with you, and to say that, you know, you could ask your teachers to actually then start to make references to these, because making it happen, we've got to create a cultural shift. Again, keep returning back to the students why they're learning about certain employability skills, linking it to the subject area that they're doing. It's not just about showing a video. It's not just a video in a geography lesson about how to be a volcanologist. That's not it. Yes, that's one job, but it's also then about pulling out those skills, pulling out the qualities of the activities that they're doing within the lesson, that then brings it to life. And I'm really hoping then that our careers leaders are given some training. Not careers leaders, I mean careers champions given some training, will be able to help to cascade that down through the departments. I wanted to highlight the Careers Leaders UK Facebook page there. If you haven't seen that as a resource, I think it's a really important one. So let's go on to the Careers Champions. Well, it's definitely not my idea. Definitely not. You've all heard of Careers Champions, I'm sure, before. CEC, I think, came up with it first, but it again makes perfect sense. You know, here I am trying to write lessons for PSH and citizenship. They're good, effective lessons. I review them every year. They've got LMI content in them. I'm getting more time on the timetable, and I'm also getting more time in ICT rooms as well, which makes a big difference. But you know, realistically, it's maybe only 5 hours for year 8 in PSHE. If I can get my careers champion to promote this within the department, and then start to link careers within their curriculum, and then increase the frequency that the students hear the language to do with employability, then all to the good. It's almost like having mini careers leads in every department. That's my vision, if I can get it through. But this is my worry. I mean, incentivizing a careers champion. It's asking a member of staff who is already a very busy person to actually take on quite a lot of responsibility. I mean, I'm going to start them small. I just want them to field the emails that I get sent. I get sent hundreds and hundreds of emails, often promoting curriculum, but I can't process them all. So if I just get a name of a department, a careers champion within the department, and I can send it through, and I can just ask them to review it. They can delete it, they can use it, whatever. But I'm kind of, just as a very small manageable step, it just means something important out of my inbox. And I think that somebody else has got eyes on it, so we don't actually miss anything that actually is very valuable. I want to build in some training for them. John was mentioning how important time is. I think time, what's more important, time or money? I don't know, but time is crucial. I have too little. I'd like to have more. But I'm getting there, you know, I've got administration support now, so that does free up my brain for other things, which is good. But I definitely need time with those careers champions, and I need to incentivize those careers champions to stick with me year on year, because that, I think, is another thing about consistency. So I can build up their expertise so they can influence their departments when they go back to departmental meetings. I want to maybe improve our website. There's some great ideas on that careers lead Facebook page. It's Sally Ambler. She's incredibly good at IT, and she's got some amazing resources. I can't even try to emulate that yet, but it would be amazing if we had a proper website, which I had separately then for staff to access all these curriculum resources. And then to add to as well, because I want them to take some ownership too. It's not just all about me. And then, yes, recording increased frequency of connections is important, you know, like what, when, who, how, impact measure. This is the evidence that we all now need to be able to provide. We're using Go for Schools. We are using Unifog. Unifog also mainly as a way of the students keeping a record of what they're doing. But also then we're going to be using Compass Plus. We've registered for it. We're still having a few issues to do with GDPR. We're just ironing that out, but yeah, that's where we're going with it. Gatsby benchmark 6. Oh, COVID has really scuppered our plans for work experience. Okay. I do think that work experience now, from a school perspective, sending students out on work experience, which we usually do at the beginning of year 11. I know a lot of schools do it at year 10. We might do it in year 10 in the future, I don't know. But sending them out for a week on work experience, I think is going to be not happening in the future. That's my personal opinion. I think the world of work has changed hugely. I think there are less people back at work in an office environment, shall we say, and therefore asking a workplace to supervise young people, very difficult. So our plans are changing, and I have given some information here about what we are proposing to SNT that will be our changed plans from 2022, with our year 10s moving into year 11 now. Can't give you a definite whether or not we're going to be going through with that. Interesting though, if you look at the bottom though, I want to try and bring our careers champions in there possibly, because any students that are left within school, which there will be, I mean, we put huge responsibility on helping, asking young people to find their work experience placement with support of maybe their parents, if possible. We do have good support from parents generally, but with the students who don't get placed, even despite our extra support that we will put in for certain targeted groups, we are probably going to be then running some kind of program within school. And if the careers champions then have those students in their lessons, a specialist lesson connected to the faculty area, and that could be their first real challenge once I get them all together in one room. I'm looking at my list above. I've got, out of the faculty of 9 faculty areas, I've got 7 careers champions identified since the beginning of September, since we've been back into school. So, final words. Ticking a box short term won't be satisfying. I think that's true. I mean, you've got a vision, you want. I mean, I know that we've got lots of influences, and yes, that provides some kind of like guidance, but within each school or institution you're in, you'll know the areas that are weaker and stronger. And I would resist just going for something that's very quick. I mean, yes, we can have quick wins, I get that, but ideally you want something that then sustains, because if you want that cultural shift, then it needs to be believable. People need to buy into it. People need to think, yes, this is absolutely the right way for our education system to be. It should be a whole person. It should be tied in with their later life. It is important that you are enthusiastic. I made a comment in the chat to John's comment about pay. We need to retain good career staff. I mean, I think I'm getting towards the end of my useful professional life, but I think consistency is key. If you're in an institution and if you can try and keep within it, and you feel valued, then why not stay in it and watch things move, watch things grow. And I've enjoyed exponential growth at LLP in careers education in my time. It didn't all start with me. I had some very, very inspirational heads of department, and I was very lucky to go on an early diploma for careers education from Nottingham Trent University that was part funded by Connections. And I don't have level 6. We have to buy in our level 6 qualified career advisors for impartial guidance. I do think to myself what will happen when I do move on, but I know that our school has got a huge amount invested in the importance of careers education, and that's it. It's that sense of belief, isn't it? Okay, I think I've come to the end of my allotted time.
Thank you very, very much for that, Fiona. Much appreciated. I see that you're happy to take questions at the arranged Q&A, so I'll see if I can find any amongst there. I think you've made some interesting key points about personal commitment and also about getting everybody on board and time and things like that, though there is the recurring theme also coming through about resources, which of course is partly time but is also money. So that's great, thank you very much. We're now going to go to another short screen break. So we will be back again at 11:40. Okay, thank you. Welcome back. We're now going to be looking more closely at external quality assurance. And for this, we have a duo who are both part of the Greenwood Academy Trust that Complete Careers has been working with for a number of years. And we have two of speakers, as I say. The first is, well, I don't know if she's actually going to go first, but is another Rachel. Rachel is the Education Advisor for Careers and Employability for the Trust. And with her is Beth, who has responsibility for aspiration and careers at Kingswood Secondary in Corby. So, over to you, ladies. And again, if you're beginning to run out of time, I'll let you know 5 minutes before you're due to finish. Thank you.
Thanks, Janet. Sorry, I'm just sharing my screen, which seems to have disappeared now, which is not helpful. Let me try again. Are you happy to share it for me, Janet? Because it's not coming up on.
Yeah, I'll share it, Rachel. Just let me know when you want me to change slides.
Lovely, thank you very much. Okay, hi everyone. Sorry about that. I'm not used to using Zoom. I'm used to using Teams. So yeah, I'm Rachel. I actually work as a careers and employability advisor across all 38 of Greenwood Academy's Trust schools. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we use the quality and careers standard to quality assure career learning across the trust. And then my colleague Beth is going to talk a little bit more about how she uses it personally within her own setting at Kingswood Secondary Academy. Can I have the next slide, please? So I just thought it'd be helpful to give you a little bit of a background about Greenwood. So as you can see, we are a large trust, approximately 18,000 pupils, and we do work in a lot of geographical regions across the UK as well. We're very proud that we have a careers leader in every single one of our 38 schools. I know that that might not seem like a big thing at secondary level, but we have careers leaders in our infant academies and all of our primary academies too. And we do have a lot of primary colleagues who either hold the Career Mark Award, including the first infant academy within the UK to receive it. We have very high levels of pupil premium across the trust, and we work in areas of low social mobility as well. And the reason why I've mentioned that is because it's one of the reasons why careers is a key strategic priority for the trust, and it comes all the way down from the CEO, all the way and filtering down all of our schools. And that is because we do recognise that a lot of our learners, and I hate the term, but it's used in education, are disadvantaged, and often their outcomes are not what we would want them to be. They often have very low aspirations, and they often don't get the kind of opportunities that their more affluent peers would have. So we work very hard as a trust, from the CEO to my role to all of our careers leads who do wonderful jobs across our academies to make sure that we're providing the best possible careers programs for our students. Can I have the next slide, please? So in terms of the career strategy at trust level, we don't have a one-size-fits-all strategy, and that is because we work in so many different geographical regions across the UK. What's right for a student in Skegness might not be right for a student in Corby or in central Nottingham. And actually, our careers leaders are the ones who are the best placed to know what is right for their cohorts. So what we try to do is support and empower them to create their own unique careers programme that's right for their cohorts. One of the ways we do this is through lots of networking. So we're very lucky that we can come together and collaborate as a trust. We meet termly, secondary will meet together with our SEND schools, and then we also have regional working groups for primary colleagues as well. And that just allows us time to plan, to strategize. And we also invite a number of experts into those sessions for training and development, and external providers that have opportunities. So John joined our secondary one recently and did a very insightful session for us. We also at trust level create and run a number of programs for our schools. But as I said before, nothing is mandatory. They can opt in and out of whatever kind of works best for them. But we try to make it something that's going to really suit their needs. So we've got some virtual business mentoring, for example, going on at the moment, which I manage centrally, but most of our schools have taken up and are using. Partnerships are formed either at trust level, if the partner is going to work with a lot of schools, or obviously at academy level, if it's more kind of regionally based. We've got large partnerships with places like DHL and Experian and Microsoft, and they work in most of the schools across the trust. In terms of how we create our strategy and the individual action plans, we base them on all of the things that we've been talking about today. So the CDI framework, the benchmarks, the statutory guidance, but really quite heavily, we focus on the quality and career standard when we're looking at academy level action plans. Can I have the next slide, please? And the reason why we do this is because the quality and career standard framework encompasses all aspects of what is good careers guidance. And we often find, and I've got a few new careers leads this year, that it is incredibly overwhelming when you first start in the role. You know, not only do you have these musts and things that you should be doing because of the statutory guidance, but then you also have this array of, you know, different providers. You've got enterprise coordinators, you've got the CEC, you've got enterprise competitions and skills builder, and it's really difficult to kind of navigate that space and know what you want to use in your careers program. And the beauty of the quality and career standard framework is it kind of pulls in all those strands that schools need to consider, and it provides this really rigorous and robust framework for them to use when they're deciding what they want to put and plot into their careers program. For me, at a strategic level, what it does for me is, because we're using it to inform our academy level action plans, it kind of provides me with an overview of where I need to plug training and development. So yes, of course, we get that from our Compass results. So I might be able to tell that Gatsby Benchmark 4 is something that we're all kind of struggling with. But what it doesn't do is tell me why we're struggling with that. And the standard really helps that, because, for example, if the issue is SLT buy-in, I'm not going to be doing a development session for careers leads. It's going to be at SLT level. So it gives much more detail to where I need to help and support my careers leads and other members of staff across our schools. It also gives that absolutely crucial external assurance. So I think we're all guilty of just kind of having this tunnel vision. You know, we're so busy when we work in careers within schools or FE or primary settings, and most of our careers leaders are teachers as well. So they've got so many different hats on, and it's difficult to kind of see the wood from the trees sometimes. And going through the quality and career standard process allows us to see things from a different lens, because someone external comes in and when we think we're banging our head against the wall about something, they might just say, actually, you're doing a good job, or have you thought about doing this? So it gives us that kind of different perspective in terms of, you know, being too close to something, and then we can then kind of work and continue to kind of improve our programs through that. The 2-year revalidation cycle is key for us. Yes, it's key because, you know, we want to keep the careers programs moving forward, but it's also key for me for discussions with senior leadership. I find what often happens is you speak to a principal and they say, well, we've got the quality and career standard now, so careers is kind of done. And you're like, well, actually, no, it's not. And we all know, and it's a frustration that I'm sure that we all find, is that, you know, people just do not understand. So they just think that badge is there and then we're all kind of fine and we can just, you know, we're doing a great job with careers. But with the 2-year revalidation cycle, I can say, well, actually, no, yes, we are doing a great job, but you need to keep working, because, you know, the careers sphere is constantly changing and we need to continue to develop our careers programs. And then Ofsted, we always say to our careers leaders that holding the quality and career standard doesn't mean that Ofsted are going to come in and go, great, you're doing everything that you should be doing, we're not going to talk to you about careers at all. And I actually personally think that that's a really good thing, because it's great to see, you know, in the new inspection framework that careers is much more prominent. But what it does do, holding the quality and career standard, is it prepares you for that Ofsted, you know, that discussion with the inspector, because you have an external assessor come in, they talk to you, they talk to your students, and you've also prepared a portfolio of evidence as well. So you're as ready as you can be to have that discussion with Ofsted. So it certainly helps with that professional discussion as well. And that's always a great sound to senior leadership for me in my role as well. And then in terms of, just really quickly, so we use CareerMark obviously as our provider for the quality and career standard across the trust. And the reason why we chose to use CareerMark is because they are an incredibly supportive team. They provide so many developmental, you know, things like this conference today. They're very happy to support us in things that we do just as a trust, and their expertise is amazing. Also, all of our schools that go through CareerMark, and you'll hear from Beth shortly, they really value the process. They obviously start nervous, like it's going to be an Ofsted inspection, but they really, really value as it goes along. And then another reason is the revalidation cycle, as I already mentioned. That is so key for us because it just keeps things going. And then lastly, as I mentioned before, you know, we are a 3 to 19 provision, and we are huge champions of primary careers work. So for us, CareerMark offer a primary award, and that was very key in our decision-making process. But if you haven't got it, or if you're working towards revalidation, I just cannot recommend it enough. It's such a great way to quality assure your programme and to really pull in all of those strands that you need to be doing. So I'm going to pass over to my colleague Beth now, and she's going to talk about it a bit more, how she's done it at Kingswood Secondary Academy.
Lovely, thank you very much. Hopefully I'm there. Janet, are you okay to put the slides up? Only because there are some changes that we made and I don't have the updated one on my computer. Is that okay?
I'm sure Lucy should be able to do that. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. That's it. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Yeah, so thank you very much for welcoming me to the conference. Like Rachel said, we work together really closely, especially through the working group meetings that we have. So if you can move on to the next slide, that would be wonderful, please. Okay, so our experience of the quality and careers standard process, we always talk about that as CareerMark. So if I slip into that, please accept my apologies. But obviously with the process that you go through at the start, I'm sure Rachel will back me up, it is quite daunting to start off with. But with GAT having that experience, and with Sian, who works with Rachel as well, that application was really supported. The tables that you get to complete and then understand how to fill in is actually quite tricky to start off with, but once you go through it, it becomes much more straightforward, which made it a really, I wouldn't say easy process, but it actually gave it a really good structure so that we were able to see exactly what we needed to think about, what we needed to go through in terms of our careers program that was already in place, which to be honest was not very much at all. And then how we could actually build on what we already had in a positive way. So we were validated first of all in July 2018, which was a bit tricky to find some students, particularly those in 11 and 13, but we had John as our assessor, and it became very easy to organise through communicating with him, and it actually extremely positive. What I really liked about the process was that the communication John had with our students was fantastic. The children were put at ease. We had students from 7 up to 13, and that communication with them just allowed them to actually explain the things that they were doing, that through the process of going with CareerMark, they were actually able to say, yes, we have done this. Yes, this has been of benefit to us. This actually has worked. We can see that this has made a difference to us and how we're thinking about careers in the future. The practical issues in terms of payment and all the different things about receipt of the plaque and that you get to put up in the school are all very easy. I would just recommend making sure your finance department are aware, particularly in a trust with many schools, that becomes a bit more of an issue. We then went through revalidation that should have been July 2021. We did that all, sorry, let me start that again. Revalidation should have been towards the end of 2020. We actually then got that January 2021. It was all done online because of COVID. I was a bit concerned about how the students would do that because the students weren't actually in school. They were at home. So we had then to obviously teams the students in. Again, we had a great assessor. We had Jo. She was incredibly understanding. She understood all of the sort of different issues with students teamsing in and actually being able to communicate with them and put them really at their ease and got them to really explain what they did. And that was something I was really worried about, because I wasn't able to say to them, look, have you remembered you've done this? Or, you know, look, you have been part of this group doing this. They were completely or pretty much on their own in being able to say what they had participated in. So it was a very honest account from them, which was brilliant. And again, that communication with the students was fantastic. So if we could have the next slide, please. So in terms of the actual completing the tables, there are 5 sections which are on there. Again, as you go through them, it was really good because the structure was very, very clear. Having to look at the curriculum, what do we actually do in each of those faculty areas? And in some there was very little going on at all. In some there were much more, but they hadn't necessarily thought that that's how it would fit. And I didn't have that overview of everything that was going on. So to go through that process was really very helpful. Information wise, advice, guidance and support, we obviously have prospects, which is our careers guidance, and we have a level 6 obviously who comes in each week. Again, our learner outcomes and the management. So all of those parts that we had to go through were very clear, really well organized, and allowed us to bring in any of the evidence that we did have. Okay, next slide please. So this is just a screenshot of some of the evidence that we used, just to show how much evidence is required. I think there is a lot there. This is for our revalidation, which is a different process to going through the initial award. But you can see here the different kinds of things that you can include. And again, it's about communicating. So we were communicating with Jo on this occasion, and she was saying, okay, that's fine, but I haven't got this. Can you make sure I have this? And again, it's that really good communication with the team that allowed us to bring the evidence in. Okay, next slide, please. I just put this on here to remind myself really that when we completed the revalidation, this guidance here is just another example of the help and support that CareerMark offer. Very, very, very straightforward, really good advice and guidance. I would absolutely recommend you read through this and use that to help guide what you do for the revalidation, because it is different to the first one, as it says there. This guidance was just fantastic. I don't think I would have been able to go through it in the way that we did and get the positive outcome without this guidance. So it was absolutely invaluable. Next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of how the quality and career standard has actually supported us, it did give us and gave me a really good opportunity to go through our programme. Like I said, we started from very, very little, but we did have some things going on, and it did highlight things very, very quickly that I could then communicate with my senior leadership team. I'm very, very lucky that the deputy principal is my link, who has always been incredibly supportive. But what it did, so for example, with the revalidation, and I'll show you the recommendations in a minute, one of them was to give more time for the curriculum, for the careers lead. I was initially on 1 hour a week, and that's now gone up to 3.5 hours a week, which isn't still necessarily as much as maybe we would like, but it's certainly a massive boost, and it has allowed us to develop the programme significantly. So just having the recommendations, if you could maybe go to the next slide for me, please. Thank you. So these were the sorry, if you go back to just where it says recommendation for me, just 2 slides previous to that. Thank you. Okay, so these were our recommendations from the revalidation, and this is just really good. I was listening to one of the speakers earlier talking about careers champions, for example. So that's something that we need to make sure that we actually do, and we investigate further and see if it's appropriate for us. If it's not, then we will need to look back at the recommendation and say, okay, we haven't done careers champions, but have we got something else that would actually help us fully embed the strategy? So the recommendations are brilliant at helping to focus me as a careers lead, but also then going to my senior leadership team and saying, look, this is a recommendation. We need to embed this. We need to build on this. How are you going to help me do that? If you can do the next slide, please. So for example, there, if you look on number 4, reviewing the time allocated to the career leader role, and then the key nature of the role in terms of staffing and financial implications. So that actually led to a discussion that meant I went from 1 hour to 3.5. So those recommendations are incredibly useful because they give you something to talk to your senior leadership team about, to say, well, actually, look, this is what we need to do. We have to do this. This is something we've got to build on. Okay, and the final slide, please. Okay, so in summary, it's a really rigorous process. When I met with Rachel a couple of weeks ago, I did say we really did have to work, and our students were amazing at earning the revalidation. It was a really rigorous process, a lot of evidence we put through, and we felt that actually, because it was so rigorous, it was something that was very positive, and that we deserve to get that award. There is tons of guidance and support offered, particularly through, obviously, with CareerMark. The recommendations there, I really do think they are there for of real benefit, rather than just creating tasks to tick boxes. It's something that we all want to avoid. It gives us a really clear sign of our commitments to our students. And actually, I mean that to them. Sometimes in schools we talk about commitment to schools and to students, but we are committed to making sure they get the best choices and that they get the best destinations. And if we can do that through CareerMark, then that's all to the good. And then looking to develop the key points and building on the achievement, like we say with the 2-year revalidation cycle, we can't go backwards. If we go backwards, if we stall in our program at all, we won't get revalidated. So it isn't necessarily the thing that should be what we're aiming to do. What we're aiming to do is to help our students get to where they should be. But having that CareerMark behind us is that support and guidance all the way through, and that help with the SLT as well. Okay, so thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you very much to both Rachel and Beth. We couldn't have asked for better adverts if we'd paid you. We're now going to have our last speaker of the morning, and then it can be some questions. And our last speaker is Jen from Framwell Gate, which is a bit further north than we've been possibly before. And Jen's going to have a look at the actual learning. And this is where I always get a little bit of a bee in my bonnet, that often I feel there is a danger that people don't think about the learning that goes on in their career programme. I call it, or we've taken to calling it sometimes, the scattergun approach, because maybe they have loads of employers in, but the question is, what did they learn and what were they intending to learn? So Jen, I welcome you with open arms to talk about your career programme, perhaps with a particular focus on the learning outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janet. I'll just pop my slides up there for you all to see as well. So yes, I'm Jen Moss. I am one of the careers team here at Framwell Gate School in Durham. We're really fortunate. We've got a team of 3 non-teaching support staff, all part-time, and our assistant head, who is our named careers lead. So we do kind of feel that we're in quite a fortunate position in terms of the time that we can commit to careers. So I'm going to talk to you today about how we are using the new CDI framework, how we're using that to shape our careers programme. And I don't for a minute want to suggest that we're doing anything particularly special or that other schools wouldn't be doing, but this is just about giving you kind of an idea how we've used it, how we found it helpful, and maybe for some of you, if you've not engaged much with the CDI framework yet, a bit of inspiration about where you might start with it. So first, I just want to give you a little bit of a backstory about where we've come from with careers provision in our school. So in 2016, I started in a role called STEM and Enterprise Enrichment Officer, which is one of those job titles that you immediately then have to explain to people what it really means and what you actually do. So essentially, I did a lot of enrichment work. I was running trips and clubs and programs and things like that to do with business, enterprise and STEM, with the aim of promoting STEM within school. So as you can probably imagine, there's quite a big crossover there with careers, but it wasn't formally a careers role. But I was working a lot with business partners. We had a lot of engagement with employers already happening. So there was, in a sense, a kind of a logical move across to careers for me. So at that time in school, we had very little formal careers provision at all, and which I think is a similar picture, to be honest, across the board before Gatsby came along. There'd been a middle management structure. It was nobody's responsibility anymore. And there were kind of events, a lot of ad hoc events, some external programs coming in, some guidance provision for, you know, very targeted Ronnie students and that sort of thing. But it was quite, as that word that Janet's just used, it was quite scattergun. So the only thing that was resembling sort of guidance for all students was that our students had an interview at their GCSE options and their post-16 options, and that was with a member of SLT from school. There was a much better picture in the sixth form, and we've had an established guidance manager in the sixth form now for a long time, who looks after progression and the UCAS process and does guidance with the sixth form. So it wasn't so bad there. So what happened next for us? I was invited in that STEM and enterprise role. I was invited to a conference in late 2016, which was run by the North East LLP alongside the North East Chamber of Commerce. And it was all about this thing called Gatsby, which I hadn't heard of before, but it was sharing the results of the North East pilot of the Gatsby benchmarks. So that was kind of the first taste I got of that. And following that conference, the enterprise coordinator from the LLP contacted me and asked to come in for a meeting and suggested we might like to join up to the Enterprise Advisor Network and start implementing the Gatsby benchmarks within school. So I took this to the head. I sort of said, yes, but I haven't got any capacity at the moment to support you, just run with it while you can, and then eventually managed to allocate me an assistant head to help support that, who really, fortunately, really kind of picked it up and ran with it and got very keen on it. So one thing kind of led to another, and we've ended up with this team, two of us working on a job share part-time in the main school, and one part-time, the existing senior guidance manager in the sixth form, plus that assistant head teacher who's our named lead. So when we started looking at Gatsby, we thought on the surface we were going to be doing really well. It was going to, you know, it was going to be a good picture because we had a lot of opportunities for students, all of those trips and things that I was running in that role that I was doing, a lot of opportunities for the students to go out to events, to get out into the workplace and all that sort of thing. But what we quickly realised was that those opportunities were by no means hitting all students. It tended to be the same students over and over again that were signing up and getting involved. So the Compass evaluation, when we got Compass and we started doing those Compass evaluations, that made it really stark that what we thought we were doing really well, actually, we were doing really well for a small number of students, but we weren't offering something that was consistent and accessible for all of the students within school. So from there, we started to work towards that stable careers programme that we knew we needed for Gatsby Benchmark 1. And the sort of thing that we were planning was a programme made up of ad hoc events and assemblies, work experience and particular opportunities for particular year groups that we knew could be consistently offered every year. So that was the sort of careers programme we were looking at. So fast forward a little bit, and the next thing that happened was we did our level 6 careers leader training. We're really lucky that all three of us in the team have managed to do the careers leader certificate. That's the one that's funded by the CEC. And while we were taking part and following through that careers leader training, we did a session on frameworks, and we were introduced to the CDI framework, the old one as it was, and we had to produce an assignment on that for our qualification. And really, once we looked at the CDI framework, that was a bit of a sort of a light bulb moment for us of all of the different learning outcomes that were covered in the CDI framework. We had been so wrapped up in worrying about Gatsby and employer encounters and workplace visits, that students, they actually weren't explicitly learning career development, you know, the knowledge, skills and attitudes for career development. And we kind of immediately knew that this was what we needed to do. This was what was going to benefit our students the most, and how we could kind of overcome that thing of we're not offering something for everybody. So the kind of conclusion that I've come to with having done a lot of work with Gatsby and the CDI framework now is that what Gatsby does is gives us guidance about how careers education is delivered. But it really only gives you very limited ideas about the content of what you would actually include in that programme. Whereas this is where the CDI framework comes in, where Gatsby tells us how to deliver our careers programme, the CDI framework is telling us what the content should be. So what are those knowledge, skills and attitudes that the students need to be learning through that stable careers programme, those employer encounters, the workplace experiences, etc. So with that, all of that came a realisation that if we wanted to cover the content of the framework, which we kind of decided that we did, if we wanted to cover that content really well, we weren't going to be able to do it through those ad hoc scattergun type experiences. We were going to need some time in the timetable. So we lobbied for some time and we got a very generous allocation, half an hour a fortnight as part of the tutor programme, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot in comparison to absolutely nothing. So where did we go with that? Now we had the time, we had to work out what we were going to do, how we were going to fill up that time. And the eagle-eyed among you will notice that this is not the new CDI framework I've got on the screen right now, this is the old one. So we knew that there wasn't going to be an existing scheme of work out there that we could buy in that was just going to work for our students. And we knew that the CDI framework isn't designed really just to be picked up and used as a scheme of work. So we need to create our own. We had things in the diary, you know, set up in our school calendar that meant we wanted particular things in particular places, and there were things that were working really well already that we did want to keep. So we needed to build a programme that would work for us around that. So what we did was, at this point, obviously, it's still the old CDI framework that you can see on there. And if you're not familiar with it, there are 17 areas of learning within the old CDI framework, and then suggested learning outcomes from that. So we got that old CDI framework, and basically what we started to do was dismantle it altogether and then rebuild it into something that could work for us for at the time allocation that we had and for our students. And this is how we did it. We took all of the learning outcomes from that framework and put them all on Post-it notes. And there are dozens, if you imagine all the learning outcomes for Key Stage 3, 4 and 5 across 17 different learning areas. And we also added a few extra themes in, so things that we knew were important for our students, and things that Gatsby picks out. So we had all of these Post-it notes with dozens of different things that we wanted to cover in our programme. And we stuck them all to the wall of our office, absolutely covered in Post-it notes. And then what we did was decided on some key sort of themes. What would be a logical theme to create a programme for Year 7, a programme for Year 8, etc., with an overarching theme for each year group. And once we'd had our themes, we started sorting all of our Post-it notes and sticking them under the right headings and rearranging until we had something that we thought looked like kind of what we wanted to deliver in our programme. And the picture that you see on the screen right now, I have to say, this is the tidied up version. This is when we were finished and we put them all into nice, neat rows. It didn't look half this tidy while we went through the process. But we then had something that we could put down on paper as a sort of careers programme that we could use the time that we'd been allocated for a discrete careers provision. Unfortunately, 2 days after that, we got locked down and school closed. So we, as you can imagine, once schools reopened in the September after the first lockdown, things changed and we very quickly lost our allocation of half an hour a fortnight, and that got turned into movement to transition COVID secure time instead. So that was a bit disheartening. We just designed this whole programme and we then weren't allowed to deliver it that year. On the upside, that has given us an awful lot of time to actually turn our Post-its into a real working scheme of work, develop it and hone it, and spend a bit of time really analysing what we want to do. So this is kind of where we were before the new CDI framework came out. We had our fortnightly career session allocated, ready to start the next academic year. That's through the tutorial programme. So Our tutors deliver the sessions for us in what we have in our day as half an hour at the end of each school day that the students spend with their tutors. So that's the space in which our sessions are being delivered. And then we had a scheme of work that we created with our post-it notes, which was based around those old CDI framework learning outcomes. And what we were also going to do was to launch the skills builder skills with our students, because we felt that that was something really important that they needed to start being more aware of and developing, was their transferable skills, and recognizing how they're developing their skills through their different experiences. And then the new skills, the new CDI framework came out. So you might think, oh no, we just spent all of that time, we were all sorted, and now we've got a new framework to worry about. But really, it wasn't like that at all. That wasn't how it felt. So what's actually changed from the old CDI framework to the new CDI framework? I've realised that I haven't actually given you a lot of information in here about what the new CDI framework looks like. I've kind of assumed a little bit of prior knowledge there. I haven't put the pretty graphic on the screen that John showed you earlier on. So hopefully you're a little bit aware of what the new CDI framework looks like. A lot of the content is the same. So we didn't have a need for a mass rewrite of our programme at all. Which is what you'd expect, considering what they've really done is they've boiled down those 17 learning areas, which was a little bit overwhelming, down to 6 broader learning areas, which does feel much more manageable. So we found that, as I say, a lot of the content remains the same. We didn't need to change that much. And some of the new themes, those broader themes that are cropping up in the 6 learning areas, there's actually a big crossover between those subjects and topics that are being taught already through our tutor programs, study skills, PSE, all of that sort of thing. So we know that some of those learning outcomes are being covered elsewhere. However, that does mean that what we've now got to do is to kind of cross-reference across more than one scheme of work. We can't just look at what we're doing in our career sessions. We've got to start looking at what other people are doing in what other areas and making sure that we know what is being covered where. There were a few new themes, things like sort of resilience and life balance and things that weren't so explicit in the old CDI framework that are really got a much more prominent place in the new one. So there were a few new things that we decided we wanted to add into the existing careers programme that we had. Or it might have been just a few things that maybe hadn't made the cut in our post-it notes. So this was the final cut that we decided we wanted to try and incorporate. But thankfully, we've now had our time increased from 1.5 hour a fortnight to 2.5 hour a fortnight. So we've got the time that we need to deliver that. So I just want to tell you a bit about how we are sort of mapping, how in a practical sense, how do we map our programme against the CDI framework? So we've chosen to use the suggested learning outcomes that the CDI provide. So within each of the 6 learning areas, there is a list of learning outcomes, learning aims for Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4, kind of just like there was in the old framework. We've chosen to use those as a basis, but they are just that, they are suggestions. So we have got additional things that we're including in our programme. So either things inspired by Gatsby or just what we know that our students need. So when we're looking at mapping it, what we're kind of looking at it in 2 ways. Where are we covering the CDI learning aims, but also where does what we cover fit within the learning areas of the CDI framework? And there's lots of useful resources on the CDI website that you can use for this, depending which way you're looking at it. There's a resource which is an audit document, which allows you to look at your programme and say, where's it happening? And then there's also a curriculum mapping document, which gives you the outcomes and says, where do you want to do it? I like bits of both. So what I've shown you on the screen here is neither of those. It's a mashup of both that kind of works for me. So the first 2 columns here on the mapping document, these are the learning areas from the new CDI framework, and the learning aims in the second column that are provided by the CDI. And also in the first column there, you'll see the list of numbers along the bottom. If you're not sure, that's referring back to the old CDI framework, the 17 learning areas, and showing you how they fit in the new one. So if you're still feeling a little bit lost off with the new CDI framework, I'd really recommend actually going back and looking at the old one, because you can see where it's come from, how it's fed into it, and it makes a bit more sense, I find. So the rest of the columns here are taken from the audit document, and I just thought that was a really useful way of representing where in our careers programme or other areas of learning within school, each of the learning aims is being covered. So what we did there is obviously complete the information for where each of the learning aims is covered within school, and then also add in some of our own learning aims to that and work out which of the learning areas they should fit under. And what this process has done is helped us to kind of red flag the areas that we think are being covered by somebody else within PSC, for example. So maybe we don't need to incorporate them in our careers programme, but we do need to go and make sure we're having the right conversations with the right people to make sure that what we think is being covered is the same as what is actually being covered. So that's kind of how we're starting to map it and measure against the frameworks. So we do really like the new framework. There's lots to love about it, but there's also kind of a few things that it's got us thinking about. So one of them is getting students and staff to understand the broader kind of links to careers. We really like these new 6 broad areas, because that for us kind of represents what we've been trying to say for a long time. Careers is about so much more than that sort of outdated idea, but still quite prevalent idea, to be honest, of just knowing about jobs and progression routes. And in a sense, when people think about careers education, I think quite a lot of them are just still focusing on what is just those the second 2 learning areas from the CDI framework, the exploring possibilities and the managing careers, and they're forgetting about the other 4 areas. So this framework's really helping us to get that message across to staff to say, look, careers is about more than just what you think it is about. It's about this kind of whole holistic approach. And all of that ties in really nicely with the introduction of Skills Builder that we were doing, and just we feel like we're starting to shift staff's understanding away from the idea of what job can you do with my subject and into what are your transferable skills, what are you learning, what career knowledge, skills and attitudes are you gaining from all of your everyday experiences and your learning within your lessons. So as staff come to understand that, we'll hope that students will also start to get that broader message about how all of their experience affects their career management, and everything is relevant in the longer term. So hopefully that then has a knock-on effect of that reason for the students to get up in the morning and turn up at school. A challenge that we're still thinking about is how we link those areas of the framework that we know are being covered elsewhere by other departments or whatever. How do we link that back with careers and make sure that students do recognise the links? So we're mulling over some different ideas. We thought about introducing them to the 6 learning areas with the coloured icons, but we've just introduced Skills Builder, and that's got coloured icons, so we don't want too many coloured blobs all over the place. So maybe it might be more about incorporating sessions into our programme that actually make those links explicit for students. We're still working on it. Communication, you know that in schools that getting the left hand to know what the right hand is doing can be a difficult thing sometimes. So it's no mean feat really, that sort of working with other people to make sure everybody knows what everybody else is doing and everyone understands how what they're doing links to the aims that other people are trying to achieve. So communication with staff is definitely a challenge. So we're working on that just kind of through building good relationships to begin with. Recognizing that maybe our priorities aren't other people's priorities, and just being kind to each other in that way. And then also where we are struggling to get engagement, as I said, we've got a really supportive assistant head teacher who really champions careers, and we do use his clout a little bit where we need to if we're not getting the engagement that we need from other members of staff. Another issue, which is really part of a bigger conversation for us, is how we track and record the experiences that students are having as part of their career development. So we're using Compass Plus to do this, but there's logistical issues in terms of if you're relying on other members of staff and other departments to deliver areas of the careers framework, then how do we make sure that we're still recording that against the individual student's career experience? it's hard enough just for us to work out how we're going to record everything on Compass Plus. So expecting other staff to start engaging with that, that's probably a bit more of a long-term aim for us, really. So that's sort of what I was wanting to say to you today. That's our story. That's how we're using the framework. Take my black screen away for you. So we're using it and how it's inspired us to kind of drastically expand our program and shift the focus towards the knowledge, skills and attitudes from where we were focusing mainly on experience. So it's not the only way of doing it, but it's an example, and we just hope that we can deliver it this year without getting locked down and sent home again.
Thank you so much, Jen. That was absolutely brilliant. As I say, it's my favourite area of careers work, the learning that is required. I mean, I am an ex-teacher and I always remind teachers that careers is another subject where you do have to learn things. So, now, in terms of the questions, I don't know if anybody's got a list that's been tweeted and sent to me, but there's only a couple I have from the chat. So, Lucy, Peter, do you know if there's any extra ones through Twitter?
Peter is doing Twitter, but he has actually just nipped out. I haven't got any extra ones though.
Okay, well, let's.
I've seen Twitter, Janet. I don't think.
Our first question was about the vagueness of the DBS checks for work experience. Decide what you wanted to do. Perhaps the panel would like to make a comment about what they've decided they want to do and why. Shall I start with you? Well, John, do you know anybody who's made a decision about that and what they're doing?
Oh, goodness. Now, I know, obviously, well, a whole manner of schools approach this in different ways. Now, obviously, there are lots of companies that specialise in doing the health and safety checks kind of thing, and you can contract with them to get work experience, and those kind of checks are built into that then to make sure the right checks are in the right place for the right people. And then obviously, I'm talking a bit beyond just the DBS checks, but also the health and safety checks. And obviously more and more schools now, and cluster of schools, are looking to do that kind of process internally. Specifically with the DBS parts, it is so difficult to make that sufficiency judgment. Now, obviously, you know, if your learners are going to be on their own with an individual kind of thing, if it's a small organization or part of they'll be working, you know, closely with more of an individual or a smaller team, then those kind of things should always be paramount to make sure that those kind of checks are in place. But yeah, okay. There's very little guidance, I'm afraid. I don't think I've helped at all there.
Gat, Rachel or Beth, have you got any comments to make about that briefly? No, maybe they've had to go.
Probably similar, Janet, because it varies across
the DBS. I mean, have you taken on doing it yourselves? Do you check the employers? Do you just appreciate that the young people will be in an environment where they're not alone with individuals? What are you doing with regard to the DBS and things?
It really does depend across the trust. So some schools do their own checks, some outsourced to another company, and some schools have started to put insights in rather than full work experience, so that they can just use our internal monitoring system rather than having to, you know, go out. But yeah, it completely varies across the trust.
Yeah.
I'm afraid.
Okay, interesting. And Jen, anything you or Fiona, what do you want? Anything you can add?
Yeah, I very much sort of follow the HSE guidance that, you know, students should be treated as employees when they're in the workplace. So as long as they're in a public environment, a lot of our students tend to go with family members and things anyway. So if it is likely to be sort of a sole trader arrangement, then we kind of don't worry about it because they're usually with a relative there. But we do often get it sometimes with a sixth form, weirdly, that the employer will actually request or insist that, we can't have somebody because we don't have a DBS, somebody with a DBS check, and that's part of our requirements. So it's not a requirement from our side, but we do find sometimes that it can be a barrier on the employer side.
Okay. Sorry, was that Jen answering my question? Yeah.
Yes,
So Fiona, anything you'd like to contribute?
Nothing new, already been said.
Nothing new. Okay. Now, my second question I was given was, would anybody, and I know GAT are a possible example, but there may be other people in the meeting, using the Quality and Careers Standard, perhaps particularly Career Mark, as that's the one most of us here perhaps know best. How does that work with the special school? I know I've assessed a number of special schools and I could tell you from my perspective, but what about from the school's perspective? Is there anybody in Greenwood? Rachel, do you want to say anything about that from Greenwood?
Yeah, absolutely. So none of our SEND schools actually hold Career Mark at the moment, but one of them is just about to submit. And it's been quite a long process, but I think working closely with John and Janet, I think sometimes there's this kind of feeling that, you know, even with the Compass, it's been difficult for SEND settings to feel that they kind of fit into some of the things that are going on in terms of, you know, what the outcomes will be or where students are going to go on to. But I think working quite closely with John and Janet, they've kind of been quite clear about the way that you can sort of edit the framework to suit the setting. So if you are looking at it from a SEND setting, I would advise talking to the Complete Careers team or another Quality and Career Standard provider and just seeing, having that conversation, because it's very much adaptable to fit in with a SEND setting.
Lovely. Is there anybody out there from OAT? Because I know I recently did one from the OAT Trust. Thomas Mosley, was it? Anybody there? No, I'm getting silence on that one. But yes, I mean, I think the point to remember is, and the government doesn't always remember it, but we try to, different special needs learners have very different requirements. So we are very willing to look at what the school feels is appropriate. As I say, the one I went to was a whole range of disabilities. And then I know that one of our other assessors recently did a hospital school, which again is very different in many ways. And we've also done things like sort of special units, if you like, where young people have been excluded. So my comment would be, if you are from a special school, don't panic, because we're not expecting you to talk to them about university if that's not appropriate. What we're looking at, again, is helping young people, whoever they are, to learn about themselves, learn about what's available to them, and take as much ownership as possible. Okay. Now, have we got any more questions at the moment? Oh, there's lots of things on the chat, but I don't know if they're questions.
Just come in there for a moment, if I may, Janet, as well, because I mean, you know, I think it starts for me about how you interpret the term career. And obviously, you know, career is all encompassing. Everybody's entitled to a career, and it's more about that life journey into, it could be into paid work, it could be into unpaid work and voluntary work, or into different care options kind of thing too. So it's about managing that journey. And obviously from that, what we've been talking about today is setting the right learning outcomes and the right aims for your program according to the needs of your learners. And when you've done that, the Quality and Career Standard and Career Mark framework works regardless of if you're kind of like a high performing grammar school or if you're a learning provider with specialist support with profound and multiple learning difficulties, it's exactly the same. The statutory duty is the same, and the need for career learning is the same.
Thank you, John. Now, I'm aware of people having to go off and do things, so I'm going to sum the conference up very briefly. Lucy, have you got some more slides? There we go. Don't forget, coming soon, the complete careers quiz. If you're particularly interested in piloting it, let us know. Next slide, please. Where are we going next? I've been listening to all the speakers. I've been trying to pull some of the concerns together. And this is what I've come up with, partly from my own perspective, but also from what other people are saying. John asked some key questions earlier on about, does the world understand careers? I started out as a secondary teacher who went into the connections service when it started up, which had been the careers service. And I think the answer is still that many, even teachers, don't understand it. So educate the educators, I think, is what one of our speakers said. And I think whole staff training about this new framework and what careers really mean is really important if you can do it and get subject champions. Same for parents, community. Can you get them involved? John also talked about professional recognition. Again, as an area within the school curriculum, careers does not get the monetary financial recompense that other areas do. Sign that petition, share it, fight for your rights as a career leader, particularly if you're not a qualified teacher, to make sure you get the recognition you deserve. If anybody didn't get to those Scottish adverts, 34k to 40k. Now, I left the teaching profession almost 20 years ago, earning 35 grand a year as a head of 6. I have never, in the last 20 years of working in careers, earned that much again, but I love my work. Share good practice. Learner needs assessment. That's something that has been alluded to, but again, make sure you assess the needs of your learners. What is it they come to you with? And again, particularly as careers takes off in primary, or if you're a big college or a college that takes people in at 14 or 16, you can't assume the same level of knowledge from all the learners. So how do you take a baseline and what do you do? Okay. And the thing again I mentioned earlier, how do we enable learners to own their own career learning and journey? Compass Plus doesn't quite do it. Maybe some of the other programs do, but it's really important because we want this to be a start of a lifelong journey. I know you probably only see them to 16, 19, or possibly 25, but they will keep changing careers. I became a businesswoman in my mid-50s. I never expected that. But we had to set up our own career company, so I had to learn a whole new set of skills. Owning your learning and development is hugely important. I'd just like to say, if they haven't all gone, I am amazed at the range geographically we've had. Thank you all for attending. We have Leicester, Kent, Gloucester, Middlesex. We have Special School, Myerscough. We have Bristol, Tenbury, Dudley, Nottingham, Northumberland, Wolverhampton, Norfolk, Stockport, and of course Lincolnshire. To say, if I've missed you out, my apologies. Oh, Buckinghamshire, somebody's just think. So great. Thank you all for coming. And just to flag up, our next big conference is due to be on April the 28th, 2022. We're not quite sure how we'll do it. Oh, Salford too as well. I'm getting all the other ones. Put them down, put them down. Anyway, thank you very much, folk. We're due to finish at 1 in actual fact, but because the question section was shorter, we are now dropping in numbers again as people go, but thank you for your patience. Anybody wants to stay on and ask a few more questions, there'll be somebody about for a few minutes, but other than that, we appreciate you coming. We appreciate the contributions you've made. If you leave a note that you're interested in piloting the questionnaire, we will do that. And the other thing I would say is you are not alone. I know that sometimes careers people find they are or think they are, but by being part of today, and if you are also a member of the CareerMark community, you will know that companies like Complete Careers try to make the links and help you to keep together. So thank you to John, who spoke earlier. Thank you to both Rachel's, Lincoln College and Greenwood Academy, Beth, Greenwood Academy, Kingswood. Thank you to Jen from Framwellgate, and last for some reason but not least, thank you to Fiona. We've enjoyed running a conference again, and we wish you all the best for the rest of the day, and keep our fingers crossed that there will be no more lockdowns.
I saw there was a comment in the questions there about the quiz, so I'm just going to answer that one briefly, Janet. But I mean, just to extend the thanks that Janet's made. This community that we have is nothing without the members. So thank you everyone for attending today, and extend those thank yous to Janet for being so organised again in making sure that people keep to time, and of course to Lucy and Peter in the office, that without them this conference couldn't take place. So there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, so incredibly grateful to the two of you. Just about this quiz, so we have been working and we've been huge fans of the Myers-Briggs personality profiling for decades, and we've always had our own kind of approach to it, and it used to be online, but then when we actually left the local authority and set up on our own kind of thing, we had to revert back to the paper version, and we've been trying to get it back online ever since. And what we've got now then is we've got a new web space for this. Then we've updated the questions, we've updated the profiling, and it's kind of like somewhere, I guess, between the I Could Buzz quiz and the 16 personality profiles, but more of a careers focus. It's free, it's aimed at 14 to 18-year-olds, and what we're looking for is for schools and colleges to register. So just, with your details about who the lead is in your organization, and then when you register, you're given a username and password, and we'd invite you to share that as far and wide with your learners and parents as possible. And that's the commitment from a school or college's perspective. What it does is it obviously helps learners to be able to understand themselves, and that's one of the most important but most underlooked aspects of career development. So it helps them to really get together more of a sense about who they are, what are their skills, what's their personality, what's their vocational personality, and how they can start to think about themselves in the view of what kind of things can I do, or what kind of things would I be more suited to in terms of work. Not necessarily career suggestions, but more key things that you might want to get from work that are important to your personality profile. So it's based around that. Some of the other platforms that do similar things perhaps give you a little bit of information, and then you can sign up for a premium account at a cost. This is free, and it's because we value it and we believe in it, kind of thing. So it will be piloted. With the pilots that's going on at the moment, we'll consult on the name of it, on the theme of it, on the design kind of thing, and we'll get learners to comment on what it's actually going to be called. So it might be something hopefully a bit more imaginative than the complete careers quiz, but you never know. So that's what it is. Please do get in touch if you want to pilot it, and we hope to be able to launch it officially, hopefully soon after half term kind of thing. So yeah, that's more about that. Extend my thanks, and you know, if you need any more information, hopefully you've got all our contact details, and if we can help, as Janet says, we're always just the other end of the phone or email.